Hey, hello everyone. Welcome back to another episode of College Inside Out. And today I am super excited to welcome Akua Asare-Anim from the University of Waterloo. Welcome, Akua. She is the recruitment specialist there, and I'm excited to have this conversation with her and to deep dive into everything that University of Waterloo has to offer.
Thank you so very much for having me, Miss Pooja. It's a pleasure to be here, and I hope I'm able to support with our conversation in helping students understand the application process, the culture, the life here at Waterloo. Super excited for this conversation, so thank you so much for having me.
Of course, of course. So I wanted to actually begin with, overarching the University of Waterloo's motto, right? Which translates to in harmony with truth. Can you tell us a little bit about this and how does it play into students' lives?
So our motto is directly reflected in our mission to advance learning and knowledge through teaching, research, scholarships here nationally and internationally, in an environment of expression and inquiry. At Waterloo, we think very differently. We act with purpose and we work together. We encourage our students to be curious, collaborative, innovative, and entrepreneurial problem solvers and leaders who seek to understand and identify equitable and sustainable solutions for the future, humanity, and for planet. And so one big thing that I say here about Waterloo is we give students the plethora of opportunities to answer the question, why not? So very curious, very collaborative space to support students and hone in and fuel that curiosity in a plethora of facilities that we will discuss here at Waterloo.
All right, fantastic. So for families who are not so familiar about Waterloo or who haven't had a chance to come and visit the university, what, according to you, are the top three things that make Waterloo so special?
So, and you hear me saying these words a lot, but I graduated from Waterloo, so I studied international development. And I always say, I wish I knew the most I know today about Waterloo when I was a student 10 years ago. So one big thing that I say is a very innovative and entrepreneurial space. We've got quite a couple business incubators. So the biggest one is Velocity, but then we've got quite a couple business incubators that are found in various faculties where students are given the opportunity to hone their ideas. So you may be that student that is very entrepreneurial and has an idea, but unsure how to build off that idea. We have incubators that support in developing mentorship from industry to support in building that idea. If you're that student that is like, I've got my idea, I know how to go, we've got pitch competitions that happen all across the semester, all across the year. So right now, we actually have one going on in collaboration with a big hospital here in Waterloo, the Grand River Hospital here in Waterloo, where they're giving students the opportunity to come up with an idea to help in the advancement of the health industry. So with this pitch competition specifically, they are awarding three 5,000 awards, three 5,000 awards to three groups of students. And so this is a way where we're supporting those student ideas from a little seed to a huge, big idea. So it's a very entrepreneurial and innovative space. And there's so many themes of collaboration that comes up in what I just described. And so collaboration is also a big thing that we have here at Waterloo. So I know a lot of students will look at us as very competitive because our grades to get in or the courses we are looking for are pretty competitive to get in. I understand that. But once here in all our faculties, engineering, math, health, science, arts, environment, very collaborative spaces where faculty, professors are willing to support students through engineering, be it math. They are collaborative spaces in terms of the project students work on. So with the engineering teams, for example, or the engineering faculty, we have system design teams, we have robotic teams. And these are teams where you look at them like, oh, you only need a math student or an engineering student to work here. No, there are various opportunities in there where we need marketing. So you need an art student or you need a science student. So we give students the opportunity to really broaden that degree. So I always say when you come to Waterloo, don't just focus on, I'm coming to do engineering, I'm coming to do math. Really push yourself outside of your faculty, get to know students in other faculties, because many a times I'm always reading articles in our newsletters where we have students collaborating to do amazing things. And not just collaboration here at Waterloo, but also collaboration with other universities across the world. So very recently, we had a group of students from the Faculty of Math and the Faculty of Engineering collaborate with students from MIT, from Rochester Institute, and from Rochester University and Pittsburgh University and the Rochester Institute of Tech. And they were collaborating on building their own autonomous vehicles. So they built an autonomous vehicle and they got to have that vehicle run on the Monza circuit in Italy. So there's so much that students are supported with, and it's not just support here at Waterloo, it's externally. And so I always say our spirit of entrepreneurship, innovation, research, and collaboration is huge. There are quite a couple of research institutions here on campus. We have the Waterloo Artificial Institution here. We have the Institute of Content Computing. So we're very, very big on don't just come and focus on that academic degree, but come and diversify the degree through the various facilities and research institutes across the campus. I always say, I wish I knew all this when I did my degree here. So whenever I speak to students, I'm really gang-ho on really, really diversify that degree when you come to Waterloo.
Oh, absolutely. And I absolutely hear what you're saying, because I think it's so important that they're getting exposure to these interdisciplinary, to an interdisciplinary environment, right? Because how many of us went into college thinking that, like with this approach that this is the only thing that I want to do and this is what I want to study. And then when you step foot into college, you realize that there's so many other opportunities that are awaiting, right? So I think that's fantastic to go in with a more broad-minded approach, right? And then pick up whatever you can. And how many students even change their majors once they're in, because they're like, oh my God, I never knew, like, anthropology was so exciting, for instance, right?
Or even the career that you may end up going to, maybe starting your own business, because entrepreneurship is such a huge thing these days. So you may be like, I want to come and do engineering, but hey, you end up working on this pitch competition, like, oh, this business is thriving, let's go with it. So you never know where that degree is going to land you. And it's not just at Waterloo, but we're huge on really answer that question. Why not? Why not do this? And we're very open to speak to faculty, speak to professors, speak to staff, and see what you can do to make that degree yours.
100%. 100%. And then, this is actually a really great segue to talking about co-ops, right? Because I know Waterloo is probably, one of the most renowned institutions all over the world, especially where your co-op program comes into play. It's a really robust program, and I would love for you to tell our viewers a little bit about that.
So when you think Waterloo, a lot of times here in Canada and international, it's like, oh, you've got an amazing co-op program. And we do have one of the largest co-op programs of its kind. And so with our programs, I'll say a good 70, 80, maybe pushing 90% of our programs have that co-op option to it. So we have 6 faculties at Waterloo. We have engineering, math, health, science, environment, and arts. And in all 6 faculties, you can find that co-op component. There are certain programs where it's only co-op. So with the engineers, for example, we only have that co-op options because Waterloo has a history of, it was initially established as an engineering school to give engineers that practical experience. So with the engineers that come to Waterloo, co-op is mandatory. And then we have a couple other programs in all the other 5 that are also only have co-op as an option. But most of the other programs outside of engineering have the co-op or the regular stream. So for example, accounting, planning, environment and business, they also are only co-op option programs. But then with the other programs that aren't co-op, you're only doing the regular stream. So co-op is a 5-year degree because the work experience extends it to 5, and then the regular stream is a 4-year degree. If for whatever reason you're an applicant and you're on the fence as to should I do co-op, shouldn't I do co-op, apply to co-op. because there's no loss in you being in a job that you get paid and get that practical experience. So if you're on the fence about it, apply to co-op directly, because with certain programs, it's easier to get into co-op as an applicant than as a current student. It's not impossible, but it all depends. And so if you're on the fence, just apply to the co-op program. And if you do get in and you realize this is too challenging and you're in a program that has a regular stream, you can switch into the regular stream. But hey, apply to co-op if you're on the fence. The way the co-op program works as well is you get between 4 to 6 co-op terms, depending on the program that you're going into. So the engineers will get 6 co-op terms maximum, a minimum of 5. Other programs, you get 5 co-op terms or 4 co-op terms. The way co-op works is majority of our programs, you start co-op in the second year. Some of the engineering programs, you may start co-op in the first year, but most of our programs, co-op is in the second year. These are all paid opportunities. You aren't limited to only working in Canada or in the Kitchener-Waterloo area. The world is your oyster. A lot of students will go work in the States. We have students that will work here in Canada. We have students that will work overseas. And so with the co-op semesters, you don't go to school. Co-op, all you do during co-op is work, and all you do during school terms is go to school. So you flip back and forth, because in Canada, co-op is very popular and every school does it differently. But with the Waterloo program, you do 1 semester of school, 1 semester of work, and then you flip back and forward until you graduate. They are all paid opportunities. We don't have any opportunities where you're not getting paid. It's a requirement that you get paid. There are certain programs as well where students don't have that co-op component. So for my program, for example, I did international development. I didn't have the co-op option. And there are certain programs like that. We do have something we call the EDGE certificate, where students are able, is not as structured as co-op. So with the EDGE certificate, you get professional development, you get volunteer experience, and you also can get a job. With the EDGE certificate, you get to determine when you want to do those components throughout your 4-year degree. So that's another option for those students who, we have a few programs like knowledge integration, our aviation programs where we don't have the co-op option. So it's just the regular stream. With those, you can do the EDGE certificate and still get that professional development and experience or work experience throughout your degree here at Waterloo.
Right. And that's great. That's really comprehensive. Thank you for that. I just wanted to add that, especially in, today's day and age where I'm having students who have just finished up with university and they are now looking out for jobs in the job market. I know that there are students even today who are like struggling sometimes to find a job, right? And I just wanted to add that doing or having these co-op experiences and having maybe, up to six co-op experiences is fantastic, right? It's a great stepping stone into the world of work. In fact, I was reading yesterday that some of the, ranking publications, they're even considering changing their types of ranking because they want to give more importance to, being work ready as opposed to just focusing on prestige and things like that. So that was really interesting to see that after so many years and decades of giving so much importance to, to prestige. I mean, of course, for some families that is important, but also
Yes.
tweaking that so that they incorporate how work ready are students when they eventually come out into the workspace, right? So,
another thing I wanted
yeah.
to add to that also is a lot of students will think of Waterloo as like, oh, co-op, great, and will think the job is right there waiting for them. One thing I want to say is it's a process. When we say work experience, sometimes we think about it, I'm just getting that job. And we forget the process you go through to get that job. And there is such value in you going for mock interviews, you being rejected from positions, you going into an interview and coming out and be like, oh my goodness, what did I just do? There is such growth that comes from that our students are able to build before they go out in the workforce that is invaluable, that a lot of students forget about. And so I always get, well, I get that first co-op job. And I always say, let's set expectations here, going with a mindset of, I may not get that Google job in my first co-op term or that government job in my first co-op term, but whatever I get, I am building the work ethic. I'm building on that work ethic that will really, really help me as I go along. Because as you go higher, any co-op student will tell you it gets easier as you go higher. But that first position may not be the easiest. At Waterloo, we have a program called the We Accelerate program that we have industry partners that come in and build a project for students who don't get that first co-op term. Dependent on the project, you may get a stipend at the end, but we have that in place to support you. You build those work skills for the next co-op term, which you are prioritized to build that work ethic or to get that work experience. And so I just want to put it out there that yes, you'll get those core positions, but also come in with the mindset of I'm building a work ethic. And the process of you going through those rejections and whatever it is, the sad days, those are also building tenacity and are part of the work experience that you acquire here at Waterloo.
100%. I mean, it's all about the journey as well, right? It's about, step by step, building yourself up, building your skills, your experiences, your learnings, to ultimately get where you want to be, right? I love that. I couldn't have said it better myself. So I love how you shared that, Akua. So, if we can switch gears for a moment and talk a little bit more about the admissions process, right? I know you mentioned that there are 6 different faculties at Waterloo. And so, can you talk us through how this works from an admissions perspective? So when a student is applying to Waterloo, do they need to put down their choice of major right from the get-go? Or how does that process work?
So that will all depend on the program that you're applying into. So with our engineering programs, so those are direct entry programs. So some institutions across Canada may have a general first year for engineering, and then you figure out what you want to get into subsequent years. At Waterloo, we don't have it that way. It's a direct entry. We've got our 15 engineering programs. If you're applying to mechanical engineering, that's where you're starting in right from the get-go. All our engineering programs have similar admission requirements. I'll say the same admission requirements. The only exception is our architecture program. So with certain programs, it's direct entry, and so we're not necessarily looking at with the direct entry programs, we are looking at the major that you apply to, but then it's a general requirement across. The only differences are the averages per program. So for example, the average for software engineering is going to be definitely different from the average for mechanical engineering, but they do have the same admission requirements to get into the program. So for the direct entry programs, that's all you're focusing on. We have programs that are in direct entry. So in the Faculty of Arts, besides the accounting program, which is a direct entry, we have the Faculty of Arts where you apply to either arts and business or into the arts program where we'll look at that English. And then once you get into the program, you can tell us, I want to do economics or I want to do psychology. And then you play around with it there. So with programs in the arts, programs in science as well. With science, we have life sciences and physical sciences. As much as there are 2 different spaces, we have a general admission requirement, and we don't look specifically at, okay, I applied to physical science with astronomy. So I'm going to be looking at, we're looking at, you apply to life sciences, do you meet the admission average? We're not looking at that major. With sciences, dependent on the science, you also are able to some extent to move around once you get into the program. So it all depends, to answer your question, all depends on the program that you're applying to. Computer science, you're applying directly into computer science. If you're looking at honors math, then you're applying into honors math, and then we have roughly 12 to 13 majors that you select once you get in. So to answer your question again, it all differs. It all depends on the program you're applying to. And one thing to be mindful of, though, is each program may have different admission averages. So engineering, all 15 have different averages along the way. We'll be working with a similar bracket of or a range, so in the high 80s to the mid 90s or the high 90s. But broadly, we have the same admission requirements, and we look at it based on that competitive average per program. So it all depends on the program that you're applying into.
Right. Okay, great. And so, so I know you spoke about admission averages, right? Now, is this information available on the website, on the Waterloo website? or is this something that students have to try to figure out by speaking to other
So we
students?
have we have the minimum stated in our brochure. We've got physical copies of the brochures. We've got the admission requirements page where you can put in your curriculum and it determines what we are looking at course-wise and average-wise. So admission team, well-seasoned, well-oiled team machine, very familiar with curriculums from all across the world. I know a lot of times students will come and say, I do the American system, I do the British curriculum, I do IB. So those are the general ones, and assume that we aren't familiar with other curriculums. We are familiar with all of them. And we make it extremely transparent. When you go on our website, you can put in your country and we'll pull out the admission averages and we'll state the minimums. We don't state the competitive average on our website simply because that varies per the pool that applies every year. But we are very transparent in saying this is the minimum average we are looking for in the English, in the math, in the sciences. With our programs in general, we are looking at a total of 6 courses. So we're looking at, depending on the program, we'll have between 3 to 4 required courses, and then we'll look at optional courses to calculate your overall average. So we are very, very transparent. We have the minimums online. We just don't have the competitors because those vary per year.
I understand. And so I know you also emphasize, and for anyone who did not pick up on that, Akua mentioned that those are minimum averages. So you want to be careful and note the fact that there are going to be some programs and some majors that are more competitive than others. And so can you tell us a little bit about maybe what are some of those majors that students should make sure that they're at least meeting that minimum requirement, if not more?
I would say with every program that is stated, make sure you're meeting the minimums. Our competitive programs are in the Faculty of Math, the Faculty of Engineering. The aviation programs could be competitive. The health programs in some years have been competitive. Which other one? There's another one I was going to mention. Our accounting programs could be competitive as well. And so if you are looking at, hands down, if you're looking at computer science or software development or biomedical engineering, please be competitive because they are very competitive. And it's interesting how I always step outside of myself as I speak to students across the world. I'm like, I'm literally speaking to your classmates. And I've seen what your classmates are doing in Seattle, and I've seen what your classmates are doing in Mauritius. So as much as I'm seeing your classmates, and I always say, to some extent, be a bit tunnel visioned in when you are showcasing yourself. Like, yes, your competition may be doing crazy things, but really, really showcase yourself. And make sure you're getting those competitive averages, especially in computer science, especially in software, especially in biomed. But we do have some competitive programs across. And so I'll say, if we've got the minimums on there, make sure that you're also working at being higher depending on the program you're going into. So in addition to your grades for programs in our engineering and math faculty, we are also looking at your extracurriculars. So with us, we call this the admission information form. In the States, they may say the personal statement, but with Waterloo specifically, we call it the admission information form. And so with that, we are looking at your extracurriculars. And this is where I say really shine, because as much as I've seen your classmates across the world, really focus on how great am I? So if you're MVP of the team, tell us which team it was. Tell us where you did the competition. Tell us you're the star of the show. Really showcase. If you've been part of a robotics competition, let us know. If you have been to an accounting summit, or you're huge in theater and you've been the best since how old, really tell us. And also, I always get students asking me, well, I want to do mechatronics. Do I have to have been part of a robotics team, or do I have to have done something within the mechanical space? And I'm like, sweetheart, no. If you're really awesome at playing that flute, tell us about it, because we really want to see how well you are outside of class. Because like I've said in so many ways, it's not just about the academics. It's about how well you are balancing everything. And I always get students asking, well, If I'm part of a varsity team, am I also being able to like really shine in class? Those are the kids that shine the brightest because you're able to balance and organize your time in such a way that you're really, really working hard. And so I'll say if you're doing all these amazing things in school and they aren't necessarily related to the program that you're going into, that's fine. Use the admission information form to shine, to really tell us what you're doing outside of class. Another thing I want to mention is if you're interested in any of the programs in the Faculty of Math, look into doing our math contests. We have the Euclid Math Contest, the Canadian Senior Math Contest, the Canadian Computing Contest. Look into these. With these contests, with the Euclid specifically, there are scholarships that are affiliated to these contests. But for whatever reason, if you don't get the grade that leads up to that scholarship, you're also being competitive. Because like I said, students across the world are doing some amazing things. So you really want to shine. And it's not pressure on the student, it's really dig deep. We all love to do something spectacular. Really dig deep and showcase that on your application. So I'll say in a whole, at Waterloo, we are looking at your grades. Depending on the program you're coming into, we are also looking at your extracurricular in the admission information form. Some programs may have an assessment or a pre-recorded interview. So with our accounting programs and with engineering, there is an online interview that is part of it. So just be aware of the different components that we are looking for. Don't just come in tunnel vision. I'm only going to look at my grades, but speak to counselors, speak to individuals like myself that can guide you along the way, or just go on our website and just be mindful of what we are looking for requirement-wise. And we're here to support you. I always say that we're always here. Most of recruiters like myself, our emails are all across the world. And so really, that's what we are here for, to support you. So send us an email. We're here to support you. But I would say when it comes to the requirements, everything is online. But those are basically the two big components that we are looking at, dependent on the program you're going into.
Right. Okay, great. And I think you already automatically answered one of the questions that I had in my mind while you were talking about this. So I can see you've been doing this a long time and you know what questions to anticipate. But I was hoping we could double click a little bit on what you mentioned earlier about, showing us different kinds of extracurriculars, even though you may not have that exact mechatronics related extracurricular, right? Show us what else you're doing. But in relation to that, I know that for some high school students, for instance, Akua, they discover computer science, maybe only in that last 11th or 12th grade where they finally take APCSP or APCSA, right? And they've just discovered it and they're like, oh my God, this is my calling. This is where I want to go. However, I have not done robotics before and I've not done maybe so much coding. Maybe they've taken one or two classes, but that's about it. Are they at any disadvantage? If they decide that, hey, I want to apply to computer science, because computer science is a direct entry program into
Yes.
Waterloo. Isn't that what we
Yes,
mentioned?
yes,
Okay.
yes, yes.
So what would you recommend for those students? I mean, do they still have a shot if they decide later on that, 11th and 12th, and then they're like, oh my God, now what can I do?
I would say there's so many resources online, and there are classes that you can take as well. I'll say really, really make the most out of the resources you have online. When it comes to computer science, we don't have any requirements asking you for coding or languages. That is more so with engineering. So let's say you're interested in software engineering, they will ask you to showcase your programming and how long you've been working with certain languages. We don't ask for specific language, like just broadly give us an idea of what we're working with engineering. So with engineering, that is a requirement. But with computer science, if 11th to 12th grade, you've got time to go online and work on some programming there or take courses in class to showcase that on your AIF. But like I said, also, you may not have done all that computing or have that experience, but you're a part of a debate team, or you're a part of a music class, or you're good in writing novels, or you love writing. Tell us about that. Really, because most times I always, especially with the tech kids, you always, oh, but I don't have that experience, but they love singing, or they're amazing with an orchestra, or so you always have to dig. And I know you and I can't support all the students on the globe as much as we'd love to. But with those that you speak to, sometimes you sit down, you have to dig deep, and they're like, "Oh, I didn't know that," you know? And so with, I'll say specifically with computer science, we don't have those requirements. We do need to see some extracurricular activity because the AIF is mandatory. But with engineering, we do ask to see and some programming and your experience with the languages is one of the requirements that we'll ask you about. And so one big thing that I would say is we are in an information age. And so for whatever reason, you can go to, if even if getting the access to that information is hard, you can go into a library and do your research because there's internet everywhere. Or even on your phones, you know, or on the internet, there's so many videos that you can watch to learn ahead of time. And so I know certain people figure out their calling in the 12th grade or in the 11th grade. I'll say it's never too late. Speak to your counselors if you can. Speak to your parents if you can. They know you more. And see how you can dig deep to really build that and bring that to life in the admission information form.
Right. No, that's great advice. And I think, and you can, I mean, one other thing that I thought about as you were talking about math competitions, and I always tell my students that, computer science is actually a mathematical science, right? That's what it really is. So I know you were talking about math competitions if you want to do a math major, but would there be any value, for instance, for doing, of doing math competitions for CS major? What
So
would you?
with us with the computer science program falls under math.
Right.
So those math contests go towards a math major or a computer science major. So
Fantastic.
strongly
Fantastic.
encourage, go on our website. We love math at Waterloo as much as we've got all sorts. We've got all other faculties because we're really known for math and engineering, but I do want to mention that our other four faculties are equally as strong. But when it comes to math, we've got the only faculty of math in North America. We've got the Center for Education in Math and Computing that is dedicated to math workshops and all things math. That is where our math contests are housed. So I'll say go on our website. You can just type CEMC in Google. It will come up. It's housed here at Waterloo. When it comes to our math contest, we've got all the math contests from past years. I don't know how far back it goes, but we've got those math contests in there. Take a shot at it. Usually kids that want to do computer science, that want to do math, love math. And so they love that space. So I'll say take a shot at those competitions, take a shot at those workshops. If coming. So one thing that the Faculty of Math does is we have recruiters that travel around to certain countries and they have math workshops with faculty. So professors from our Faculty of Math, if we happen to be in your country, we'll love to come to your class and we'll love to host a workshop because I've had amazing reviews from these workshops. But we have this resource for you as well online. So I'll say go online, CEMC. If you have any questions, send an email to CEMC@uwaterloo.ca. We are here to support you. And these competitions, the Euclid math competition, for example, are done in-house. So they are done in country. So if you are in India, it's happening. We have contest centers in India. If you're in the US, if you're in Canada, if you are in Rwanda, we have contest centers across the world. So these are things that are easily accessible to you, dependent on where you're living.
Right. And that is great information. So again, I just want to make sure that students and families understand that CS is part of the math program at University of Waterloo. I know there are going to be many universities that offer it as part of the arts curriculum as well. So yes, for sure, go ahead and explore those math contest opportunities because it sounds like it's really going to make a difference, right? And that's great. And I have one more question, Akua, about CS, if you're okay with that. Because, just coming from Seattle, most of the families I work with are all thinking about computer science. And so for the ones who are open to, considering Canada, I'm always recommending Waterloo, right, as a possible option for them. Now, can you just dive a little bit deeper into the actual application? So when students say that, they're gung-ho about CS, that's what they want to do, they put that down as their, it's a direct entry program into math, right? So they say that's what they want to do. Is there an option for them to provide a second option for that? If they don't get into computer science, is there another option for them, and how does that work?
So all times, we always say when we're speaking to students, when you're applying to computer science, one of the most competitive, have an option. Don't put all your eggs in the computer science basket. And sometimes it's not the fact that you didn't meet the requirements. It's just that we've got more applicants than we have spaces. And so I have spoken to students who say, but I did this, and I didn't get in. It's not the fact that you're not amazing. You are. It's just the fact that we don't have enough spots for all the students. And so I always say, yes, it's competitive, so have a backup. Good backup to have is we have the honors math program. So with the honors math program, you'll definitely have to pick one of the 13 majors in there, but you will be taking computer science courses in there as well because it's in the Faculty of Math. So you will be taking computer science courses in there as well. And it doesn't have the average, usually the competitive average isn't as competitive as computer science. So have that on as a backup. Another one that a lot of students don't know about is the geomatics program. So the geomatics program is geography and computer science, and that is housed in the Faculty of Environment. So students in there will be coming out and having careers in becoming a geographic information system specialist, data analyst, remote sensing specialist. These are some careers that students can be doing in the geomatics program. So a lot of students don't know about the geomatics program. Great program to be in the Faculty of Environment. Isn't as competitive, but you get those computer science courses in addition to taking geography courses. So usually the first is honors math. I would say it's a great second option, just because when you apply to Waterloo, you're applying through a platform called the Ontario University's Application Center, or OUAC for short. And on there, you get opportunity to apply for 3 programs for 1 application fee. So you can apply to computer science, you can apply to honors math, and then you can apply to another. You will be looked at each program independently. So each program is looked at as one program. If you get into computer science, you get into math, you get into whichever the third option is, you tell us, I want to do computer science. Just because you apply to computer science does not mean we'll look at your math application. Just because you apply to math doesn't mean we'll look at your computer science, because they are all looked at independent of the other. So I'll say those are good ones to look at. Another thing that most students aren't aware of as well is our computing minor, I believe it may be. So it's either a computer minor or a computing option. But that particular program is not a program, it's an option or a minor, allows you to take roughly 10 computer science courses. And so you come in there, you take 10 computer science courses, and students across the campus in any faculty have the availability to take that computing option or the computing minor, as long as you meet the requirements. And that's another thing that a lot of students aren't aware of. And so a big thing that I say when I speak to students is, yes, your major, you take a lot more courses than you'll take in a minor and an option, but you still get those computer science courses. You still get that experience and exposure. And it's not the easiest often convincing a 17-year-old that you taking 10 courses could serve the same way as you taking 40 courses, you know? And so it's another thing to look into. So for sure, I would say computer science. Apply to computer science because everybody wants to do computer science. It's the world we live in right now. But we have the honors math program that allows you to take computer science courses in there as well. You do have to pick a different major in there, or you can look at the geomatics program if you're interested in computer science and geography, and don't necessarily always have to be interested in geography to do that program, because we have students that will get into the geomatics program, will not get into computer science, and they actually end up loving it, you know? And the kids in geomatics and the students in computer science are able to apply to the same roles. And so I would say encourage students along those ways, simply because computer science can be very competitive. And it's not that you're not an amazing student, it's just that we've got fewer seats than we have the number of applicants. We get thousands of applicants into computer science every year.
Right. No, and that's great. That's a great clarification. And the other thing that I will quickly add is that when I'm talking to students again who are graduating or who are, almost graduating, right? They will always say that when they're applying for jobs, and they will talk about really about how do you weave your story and how do you spin your story. So irrespective of the major that you're pursuing, right? Like how Akua, you were saying, whether you're taking geomatics, right? Was that
Geomatics, yes, yes.
geomatics or computer science? It's really about how you weave your story to your potential employer, right? So yes, so that's really, really great advice. I think you're like dropping all these gems, for our viewers, and I'm sure they really appreciate everything you're saying. I know we are already way past time, but maybe just one more question about admissions. Just because I know that sometimes students who are applying from here are concerned about their standardized testing, right? Is there, how important is that in the admissions process? And again, if we can just maybe focus on computer science, just because, that's what many of these kids want to do.
Okay, so we don't look at your ACTs or your SAT scores. If you've taken them, great, because other institutions will require them. But with us, for computer science specifically, we are looking at your admission information form, so your extracurriculars, and your individual courses. So dependent on the curriculum that you're coming in with, we are looking at that English and that math to get into the program. So no SATs, no ACTs.
Right. Okay, that's great. And that's super refreshing because many of the colleges now here in the US are now, they have gone from recommending testing to requiring testing, right? So that's really a welcome change. And I'm sure, students are going to feel a lot of relief hearing that it's not that important, right? Thank you so much, Akua. This has been super phenomenal. I know that I've gotten a lot of value out of this conversation, and I'm sure everyone else as well. Yeah, I mean, just really appreciate everything you shared with us today, and just feeling so, so grateful.
Thank you so much for having me. I could go on for a while about it because it's an institution that is very close to my heart. But no, thank you for having me. And if for whatever reason, I know Miss Pooja will leave my information the in at some point somewhere in the space. Please feel free to reach out to me. And if I don't have the answer, trust me, I know someone who does. But please, I'm glad that you found this beneficial, and I hope this really helps with the application process and helps ease the process as you go along. So thank you so much for having me. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you again.